The room went silent. The young woman's request had barely left her lips when the colonel burst into laughter, his chest shaking as his men joined in. To him, it was absurd, impossible, even, that someone like her could be taken seriously in the brutal world of military command. But then, before the laughter had even died down, the decorated Navy SEAL commander slowly rose to his feet. He locked eyes with her, raised his hand in a sharp salute, and the entire room felt the ground shift. The colonel's grin faded, because in that moment, everyone realized something extraordinary had just begun. The conference room was heavy with the scent of coffee and the quiet hum of overhead lights. Officers in crisp uniforms sat around a polished oak table, their decorations glinting under the fluorescent glare. This was not a place where interruptions were tolerated, nor where anyone outside the tight circle of command dared to speak. Yet, in the middle of that stifling atmosphere, a young woman stood with her back straight, her chin lifted, and her voice clear. Her words were simple, direct, but they carried weight. She made a request, not timidly, not wrapped in apologies, but with the steady tone of someone who believed in what she was saying. And that alone seemed to unnerve the room. For a moment, silence hung. Then came the colonel's reaction. He leaned back in his chair, his face breaking into an amused grin. The laughter erupted suddenly, filling the room with its sharp, dismissive echo. His chest shook as his hand slapped the table, and soon, others followed his lead, chuckling under their breath, nodding as if to confirm that yes, it was ridiculous. Ridiculous that someone so young, so out of place, could speak with such authority. Ridiculous that she thought she could stand among them, seasoned officers, men who had spent decades in war zones, who bore scars and medals as proof of their worth. But if their laughter was meant to break her, it didn't. She stood still, her eyes fixed on the colonel, her expression unchanged. Inside, her heart pounded, but outwardly, she showed nothing. That was her strength, to refuse to flinch, to refuse to bend under the weight of mockery. The colonel's voice cut through the chuckles, dripping with condescension. "Do you even understand what you're asking?" he sneered, shaking his head. "This isn't some classroom project. This is war. And you," his eyes scanned her from head to toe, "you don't belong here." The words hit hard, sharper than the laughter, meant to wound, to put her back in her place. Yet, she still didn't move. Around the table, some of the men smirked, while others avoided eye contact, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. There were always those who followed the strongest voice in the room, and at that moment, the colonel's was the loudest. His authority filled the air like smoke, choking out the possibility of dissent. But what he didn't see, what none of them saw just yet, was the shift beginning to take place in the shadows. Because while the colonel laughed, another man was watching closely. The Navy SEAL commander sat quietly, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on the young woman. Unlike the others, he didn't laugh. He didn't shake his head or smirk. He simply studied her, the steadiness in her voice, the way she refused to wilt under ridicule, the quiet fire that burned behind her eyes. The colonel's laughter was still echoing when the commander made his choice. And soon, the entire room would realize that the balance of respect was about to change forever. The colonel's laughter still lingered in the air, harsh and mocking, when the Navy SEAL commander slowly pushed back his chair. The scrape of wood against the floor silenced a few chuckles, but no one expected what was about to happen. The colonel glanced over, expecting perhaps a smirk of agreement, maybe a word to reinforce the mockery. Instead, the commander's expression was unreadable, calm, steady, and utterly serious. He rose to his feet with deliberate slowness, his tall frame casting a shadow across the polished table. The air seemed to tighten, the rhythm of the room disrupted. Every eye followed him now, waiting to see if he would join the colonel in dismissing her. But then, in a single, precise motion, he lifted his right hand to his brow and snapped into a salute. The sound of his hand striking the brim of his cap was like a gunshot in the silence. Crisp, perfect, unquestionable. The gesture carried centuries of tradition, the weight of brotherhood, and the discipline of warriors who lived and died by honor. The young woman froze, her breath catching in her chest. She hadn't expected this, not here, not in front of men who had already decided she was an outsider. Yet the commander's eyes never left hers. His salute wasn't casual, wasn't pitying. It was a recognition, a declaration. Around the table, jaws tightened, and a few backs straightened instinctively. The colonel blinked, his grin faltering as the power in the room shifted away from him. He had expected amusement to spread like wildfire, but instead, Respect, raw, commanding respect, was now filling the air. "Gentlemen," the commander's voice was low, but it carried like thunder. "We salute courage. Not age. Not rank. Not appearances. Courage." His words hit the room like a hammer. It wasn't just the salute that stunned them, it was the conviction behind it. The commander, a man whose name was whispered in training camps, whose career was built on missions no one else dared to attempt, had chosen her. In front of everyone, he had placed his respect in her hands. The colonel shifted uncomfortably, his authority slipping through his fingers like sand. He forced a chuckle, trying to brush it off, but it sounded hollow now, empty. The laughter he had started had evaporated, leaving only a heavy silence and the weight of the commander's salute. The young woman felt her chest tighten. She hadn't asked for this. She had only spoken her truth, made her request with honesty and determination. And yet, here was a man who had lived the harshest realities of war, acknowledging that truth with the highest form of respect the military could give. For the first time since she entered that room, she wasn't standing alone. And as the commander's salute held steady, others in the room began to question themselves. Some shifted in their seats, unsure whether to follow his lead. Others looked down, ashamed of their earlier laughter. A ripple had begun, one that would not stop until the last man in that room confronted what true leadership looked like. The colonel's smirk was gone. His eyes narrowed, his authority shaken. Because in that instant, it was clear, the salute had not just been given to her. It had been given against him. The commander's hand lowered slowly, but the weight of that salute lingered in the air like a storm cloud refusing to break. No one moved. No one dared breathe too loudly. The silence was not empty. It was charged, tense, alive with the unspoken realization that the room had just witnessed a fracture in the chain of arrogance. The young woman stood taller now, though she hadn't shifted an inch. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't let triumph soften her face. She simply met the commander's gaze with steady resolve, as if acknowledging that his gesture wasn't a gift, but a challenge. A challenge to live up to the respect he had just given her. Across the table, the colonel's jaw tightened. His earlier laughter now seemed childish, brittle, the kind of arrogance that couldn't withstand even a moment of true conviction. He cleared his throat, searching for words, but nothing came. His authority, once unshakable in this circle of men, had been stripped bare. Because leadership, everyone now realized, wasn't about the loudest voice or the highest rank. It was about the courage to see worth where others refused. And the commander had seen it. One by one, the officers around the table shifted in their seats. Some stared at the young woman with new eyes, others kept their gaze fixed downward, unable to face what they had just participated in. A few, quietly, straightened their backs in subtle solidarity, a recognition that if the commander had chosen to salute, then perhaps they had been wrong to laugh. The ripple spread, unspoken but undeniable. Respect had been redirected. Authority had shifted. The young woman broke the silence at last, her voice calm, almost gentle. "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came here because what I'm asking for matters. And if you can't see that, then you're not the leaders you claim to be." The words were not shouted, not sharp. They were measured, precise, and far more cutting than anger could ever be. They reminded everyone in the room of something they had forgotten, that true leadership is not earned through mockery or intimidation, but through integrity, vision, and courage in the face of ridicule. The commander gave a single nod, confirming her words without adding anything more. He didn't need to. His salute had already spoken louder than any speech could. The colonel leaned back, his face stiff with the bitter realization that the room no longer belonged to him. His authority had cracked, exposed by a single act of respect. And though no one said it aloud, everyone felt the same truth pressing down on them. In that moment, it wasn't the colonel they would follow. It wasn't the medals or the rank or the booming laughter of power. It was the quiet strength of a young woman who refused to bend. And the commander who chose to honor it. The meeting moved on eventually, the paperwork still waiting, the discussion still to be had. But no one left that room unchanged. 4 years to come, they would remember the day when a colonel laughed and mocked, and a SEAL commander answered, not with words, but with the salute that silenced the room and reminded them all of what leadership truly meant.